Good evening, everyone. Tonight I want to tell you a story that really shaped my life. When I was 17, I started working at a gas station in Mexico, working as a gas station attendant and also cleaning windshields for those who would let me to earn some extra money. I worked at night, since I was attending an open high school during the day. It's worth mentioning that this gas station was almost on the outskirts of the city. I would go with a co-worker, a 40-year-old man who worked the same shift, and he would kindly pick me up and drop me off every night on an avenue that was on his way, a few blocks from my house, so I would walk from there. One early morning while working, it was just my co-worker and me around 3:30 a.m., and there was no one in the area. Suddenly, a car arrived and parked where I was serving. It was a car with dark windows, almost impossible to see inside. The driver rolled down the window and a young woman asked me to fill up the tank. As I started to do so, she got out of the vehicle and told me she would go to the gas station store to buy some candy for her son, who was in the back seat, asking me to watch him while she was gone. I naturally agreed, telling her not to worry. She smiled, thanked me, and went to the store. Nothing seemed strange up to that point. The rear windows were shut and very dark, but I could see movement inside. Not much, but it was evident that someone was moving around, seemingly the child, very restless. I finished filling the tank and was just waiting for the woman to come out to pay me, and also to ask if I could clean the windows. I kept noticing movement inside the car in the back seat. Finally, the woman came out with 2 bags full of junk food, smiling at me in a way that I found somewhat disturbing. As she walked, she kept smiling at me. I returned the smile once and turned away, but it made me very uncomfortable. When she reached the car, she asked if her son was still inside. I said yes, and then she took out her wallet, paid for the gasoline, and even tipped me for watching her son. I thanked her, and she got into the car, turned it on, handed the bags to her son in the back seat with much affection, saying, "Look at all I got for you, honey." I thought they were about to leave, but before doing so, she turned to look at me and said, "Look, this is my son, Brian." Then she rolled down the rear window, and there, seated, was the nearly skeletal corpse of what appeared to be a teenager, fully dressed with a cap on. I was petrified, barely remembering how I reacted, almost unable to recall anything but feeling a great deal of fear. I don't know if my co-worker who was in front of me saw how badly shaken I was, but he immediately came over. At that moment, the woman rolled up the windows and simply drove away. I stood there, stunned and unable to react, while my coworker kept shaking me, asking what had happened, trying to snap me out of it, until I finally managed to speak and told him everything. He grabbed his phone without saying a word and called the police, giving them a description of the car and which way it had gone. After that, he took me home since I was very shaken up. The next night when my co-worker picked me up, he told me that the prosecutor's office had called him, thanking him for reporting the incident. It turns out that the woman had been searched for by her relatives from another state. They said she had gone insane after losing her son to a disease, but then she disappeared without a trace, and they never knew where she had buried her son. It's incredible, but it happened to me to experience that disturbing event, so her family could finally find her and discover that, in reality, she had never buried her son. I'm now 28 years old and believe I've gotten over that event, but without a doubt, it's something that will forever be etched in my mind. Hello, the Dark Side audience, this is Maria, and I want to share something quite disturbing that happened to my best friend and me while we were road tripping. To give you some context, I'm Mexican but was living in the United States at the time, attending college. I lived in the college dormitories where I met my best friend, who is Chilean. She was also my roommate back then. Our story takes place on a night when we were traveling alone to spend a weekend at the beach, about 3 hours away from where we lived. We rented a car and set off to celebrate her birthday. We left on a Friday around 8 p.m., after our last class ended at 6 p.m., and it took us some time to pack. Everything was going fine. We were excited to get to the beach and have dinner at the lovely hotel we were going to stay at. However, halfway there, we needed to use the restroom, so I looked up the nearest gas station on the GPS, which required a slight detour to the right but was the closest one. Upon arrival, indeed, it was a gas station, but for some reason it was closed. Luckily, the restrooms were outside and open. Despite the place being quite deserted and in a desolate location, we decided to stop. We parked the car in front of the restrooms but on the opposite side of the parking lot and quickly got out. So far, so good. We went into the restroom without wasting much time. But as we left, we encountered something truly disturbing. My friend exited first, and as I followed, drying my hands and looking down, I suddenly felt her stop me with her hand staring straight ahead. I looked up, and there, right in front of our car, less than a meter away and amid the darkness, stood a man, motionless, who easily towered over 2 meters tall. We were both frozen in place. Even though we couldn't see his face due to the darkness, it was clear he was watching us, his long arms hanging by his sides in a stance of alertness. Neither of us spoke for several seconds until my friend whispered nervously, "What do we do?" I had no answer. Hiding in the restroom was not an option, especially since it had no door, and the man could easily follow us inside. We stepped back and I tried to call emergency services on my phone, but there was no signal. When I asked my friend to check her phone, she realized she had left it in the car charging. There we were, completely vulnerable to this entity or whatever it was, towering and truly terrifying. Then my friend mustered the courage to yell at him to leave us alone, but the man only shook his head from side to side without any expression or response. I whispered to her that we needed to run in the opposite direction and seek help, but she reminded me we were too far on foot from the main road, since we had taken a detour to get there. I was petrified, my entire body trembling, trying my hardest not to cry. Throughout this ordeal, my friend remained as calm as possible, always standing in front of me, never backing down. I'm not sure how long we stood there facing this man, but it felt like an eternity until we saw car lights approaching the gas station. We signaled desperately for help. However, as the car drew closer and we turned back to where the man had been, he was gone, as if he had vanished into the darkness in the blink of an eye. At that moment I broke down crying, shaking uncontrollably. My friend comforted and hugged me as an elderly couple from the car came over. The woman approached us to kindly ask if we were all right, having seen our signals and my tears. Although I was too shaken to speak, my friend recounted everything. The couple was astonished, mentioning they hadn't seen anyone else when they arrived. Eventually we calmed down, got back into our car and left that place, filled with terror at the thought of encountering that entity again. We debated turning back, but ultimately decided to continue to the beach in an attempt to forget the nightmare at the gas station. Despite having a good time that weekend, the incident is something we'll never forget. On our way back, we didn't stop anywhere, driving straight to the university, where we shared our story with friends who offered all sorts of theories. In the end, they all agreed that what we encountered was not human. There are many strange things on the roads in the United States hidden by the government, not meant to be known. We're almost certain that what we saw was part of those secrets.